when I met him, and I was just amazed by the serenity I saw on his face, by the confidence in which he conducted his life, his day-to-day act. I mean, he seemed so content, so at peace, so fulfilled, and so happy. And I knew at that moment that this is who I want to be, and this is what I want to experience, and this is the purpose of my life. And I mean, if something like this, if someone else in the same era, on the same earth, is experiencing just that, I mean, why not me? Why can't I be that person experiencing the serenity and fulfillment that I see in his face and I see within him? And he, in fact, directed me to Satguru Shri Prashmita Shri Maharaj Sahib, who is going to be my guru after Diksha, who is my guru currently. And I basically, for the past 5 years, on and off, I have been going to India and staying with her and studying under her and learning from her, and more than anything, just observing her and just being amazed by who she is. I mean, she is a head of more than 65 disciples. There's a woman who told her that we are 4 people in our house and we still can't maintain any peace. And here you are responsible for more than 65 young girls. Not only the 65 young girls, but the families attached to those young girls. Like once I take Diksha, I'm sure my parents would frequently visit me and meet my guru and spend time with her, and she would take on their responsibility in terms of spiritual growth as well. So she here is responsible for hundreds of people, and yet the calmness you see on her face, the maturity you hear in her voice and her actions is just something I was amazed by. How I mean, not everyone always listens to her, not always everything goes her way. She's also 63 now, so she herself has physical difficulties and illnesses that she's going through. But from within, she's completely at peace. No matter what the situation is, externally it doesn't touch her internally. Internally, she's always at peace, always joyful, always happy, and you can literally see that in her eyes. And when I met her, and as I got to know her more and more, I mean, it just blew my mind, knowing that someone like this even exists, knowing the joy and peace she's experiencing every minute of her life. And it just convinced me more and more how this philosophy and this understanding can give one true peace and happiness, and how wrong I have been all through my life looking for this peace and happiness in the external world, in material objects, in external successes, in attention and appreciation from people. I realized how that has only made me more miserable. And here are people who have none of those things, and yet they're experiencing pure joy and pure peace. And it just convinced me that this is what I want to do with my life. Of course, I needed the time to prepare myself physically, mentally, emotionally. I needed to gain a deeper understanding of Jain philosophy, and of course I needed to work on my level of conviction and faith considerably. So since the past 5 years, I've been going back and forth to India, living in India for about 3 to 4 months a year, probably sometimes 5 months even. And just this year, I stayed my longest, which was probably 6 to 7 months. And finally, about 3 to 4 months back, 3 months back, I took the decision of taking Diksha myself, because I was convinced not only by looking at those who are living that life, but also with my through personal experience by living with them, that this is a path that's given me true fulfillment. And it is really by living this path, going on this path, understanding this philosophy, I'm really able to get rid of a lot of negativity within me, which is basically the reason for all our unhappiness is the negativity that's within us. And the negativity that's within us can be translated into which basically means the negative emotions that consume us every day. some of them being our own ego, some of them, another one being greed, another one being lust, another one being selfishness, another one being constantly criticizing and complaining, another big one being jealousy and competition. And all these negative emotions were greatly alive in me before. But I noticed as I was learning more about Jain philosophy, as I started actually living with the Satvijis, the negativity within me was greatly reduced. Before, I was an extremely judgmental person. I used to judge people on superficial standards such as the way they look, the way they speak, the jobs they do, the amount of money they have, the brands they wear. I used to judge people on, the schools they went to. And finally, I think now after these 5 years, I think I can connect with people more at a soul level, seeing that they are no different from me, and trying to instead look at them as a soul in the sense that knowing that this whole material and their body, the way they look, the money they make, all those things are completely external from who they truly are, and trying to understand and appreciate more what kind of person they are, what their values are, what their virtues are. And I feel just having this ability to not judge people based on purely superficial standards has greatly enriched my life. It has tremendously increased the quality of my thought, and it has given me such a sense of fulfillment from within that I cannot describe. Secondly, I think before I was extremely egoistic, and I lived by myself in Manhattan. I had my own apartment whilst I was working, so I was very used to things being done my way. And as a result, I don't think I really respected or appreciated my parents in a true sense. And it was always my way or the highway, or things have to go, the way I wish them to go. And basically, I think that's how I lived my life. I don't think I had a very open mind. I don't think I was very open, especially with my parents, to hear out what they have to say. I don't think I even really respected them or appreciated them for everything that they have done for me. I didn't even acknowledge the fact that who I am today is because of them. And I think just living with the Satvijis and seeing the amount of vinay, seeing the amount of humility amongst them, seeing the way that they worship their guru, seeing how grateful they were for each other, and just the way they spoke to each other, the softness, the warmth in their voice, the tenderness, the amount of respect they had for those who were older to them, the amount they valued what their guru said or what someone older to them said. It really was a big eye-opener for me to realize how selfish I was, how egoistic I was, and how, I guess, just very hard from within I was, and how little I appreciated what my parents had done for me. And I think this is one of the most beautiful things I've come out of, that has come to me after living with them, was I think at this moment, I think I can truly appreciate my parents and respect them. And had I not had this experience, I don't think I would have ever been able to get here. And I would have had a big regret in my life later on that, it's like how cold-hearted was I, how arrogant was I to not even take into account how much my parents have done for me today, or my brother for that matter. And this was another beautiful learning I got just by observing the Satvijis and how they lived and how they interacted with each other, how they interacted with their gurus. So that was one of the most beautiful teachings I have come back with. And not only beautiful teachings, but I've realized that the more I'm able to control my ego, the more peaceful I am from within, and the more happy I am from within. And I realized that actually whatever negativity was within me back in the day, whatever maybe internal pain I might have had at times, was all due to my ego. And I think now, being understanding this has really helped me to become internally at peace or internally fulfilled. And another thing that I think that I really learned was how to be more selfless. I think before I was an extremely selfish person, and as I said, I was totally controlled by my ego. I was doing everything without even considering what impact it would have on others, just to feel important or to feel special. And an example of that is that I was crazy about brand names. Everything I owned had to be branded. And it's, and I mean, to the extent that I didn't even care how that object was created. Like most branded things have leather or come from the leather. I mean, have some part of them which is made of leather. Even if it is like a Louis Vuitton or a Longchamp, the straps are made of leather. Most shoes are made of leather. Wallets are made of leather. And I was so ignorant towards the pain and torture that the animals have to go through for this material to be created. And I just wanted to share with you all how leather is created and what the animals actually go through. And I think it will be a great eye-opener for most of y'all. I'm assuming a lot of y'all are Jain, or if not Jain, at least vegetarian. And we usually take great pride in being vegetarian and being at least that compassionate that we don't kill a 5-cent being just to, for like 5 seconds of taste. And that in itself is a very cruel act. But to me, using leather is no different from being a non-vegetarian. The only difference is we're not putting the leather in our mouth, but we're still killing an animal just so that we can fulfill our ego, because we're so controlled by the need to be important or special that we've become so insensitive to the impact that our actions are having on other living beings. So I just want to read a small article on how leather is created. I think it would be helpful to a lot of y'all, maybe educate a lot of y'all about how leather is created. So with every pair of leather shoes you buy, you sentence an animal and your own soul to a lifetime of suffering. Because those, the very basis of any religion, I won't just say Jainism, but any religion that has originated in India, whether it be Hinduism or Buddhism, all those religions believe in the law of karma. What you give is what you get. And I think as a society, we've become so arrogant and so ignorant that we don't even believe that what we give is what we get. We feel that we can cause any amount of pain and torture to other living beings, but we will go scot-free. And unfortunately, that is not the truth. Even though we may choose not to accept the law of karma, it still exists and no one can escape it. So when I read what I'm reading, you have to be aware that what is happening to these cows and these dogs and cats for leather, it very well will happen to us someday, in some life, if we continue the use of leather, and not only continue the use, but we use it with such pride and joy. We think that, oh my God, this is such an amazing item. I don't even think that we really think it's beautiful. We're only really doing it for the status symbol most of the time that leather carries with it. And the more pride and joy that we have in our heart, that just proves how insensitive and cruel we have become and how selfish we have become. So I'm just going to continue with this article. Most of the leather in the US and Europe comes from India and China and other countries where animal welfare laws are not enforced. Animals are grotesquely abused in ways that shock the conscience of all kinds of people. While transporting the cows to slaughterhouses, cows are overcrowded in trucks. Many of these animals are so sick and injured by the time they arrive the slaughterhouse that they must be dragged inside. Cattle who collapse from exhaustion have their tails broken or chili peppers rubbed in their eyes in order to force them to keep moving. Once inside, their throats are cut, often with dirty blunt knives and in full view of one another. Some animals are also skinned and disemboweled while they are still conscious. In China, the world's leading leather exporter, in addition to cattle and sheep, 2 million cats and dogs are killed for leather. The leather in our handbags, shoes, etc. can very easily be the skin of a dog or a helpless cat, as these products are often mislabeled. Confined to wire cages in which they can barely move, these animals are routinely skinned alive and hacked apart piece by piece until they bleed to death. If you are wearing leather, you are wearing the skin of a horribly abused animal. And the worst part, as I said, is we feel so proud when we carry a Louis Vuitton, when we carry a Chanel, or whatever brand it is that we carry. And this is something that we really need to wake up to. I think I'm assuming a lot of you are Jain, and ahimsa and non-violence is something that we are born into. This is the very basis of the sanskars we have received from our grandparents, from our parents, from our Bhagwan. I mean, we would think twice before we step on an ant or before we put a piece of chicken in our mouth. But then how is it that we're so happily and joyfully and proudly supporting the leather industry? This is something that we truly need to question ourselves and make that necessary change in our life. I also want to briefly touch on the down industry with the approaching, already approached, and how down feathers are also produced. So quickly, I'll just read an article related to down, because most branded, puffy jackets have down in them. The cold-hearted and cruel down industry often plucks geese alive in order to get their down, the soft layer of feathers closest to a bird's skin. These feathers are used to produce clothing and comforters, but for geese, the down industry's methods are anything but comfortable. Undercover video footage shows employees on goose farms pulling fistfuls of feathers out of live birds, often causing bloody wounds on the animals as they shriek in terror. The frightened animals are often squeezed upside down between workers' knees during the painful procedure. In one instance, an investigator photographed a worker who was sitting on a goose's neck in order to prevent her from escaping. Live plucking causes birds considerable pain and distress. Once their feathers are ripped out, many of the birds paralyzed with fear are left with gaping wounds. Some even die as a result of the procedure. Workers often sew the bird's skin back together without using any anesthetics. And lastly, I want to talk about the egg industry. I know there's a new argument come about that eggs are vegetarian because they are unfertilized. Regardless, not touching on that subject, just the way that eggs are produced is extremely cruel. And I think, if we truly wish peace in our own life and in our many lives to come, we have to ensure that we give that peace and we give that fearlessness to all life around us. Not just human beings. It's not even like we're treating all human beings well, so that's a big question. But I think that we should all be educated about what we use and where it's coming from, and not just be a product of the marketing world and just going with the flow and just doing things to fulfill our ego, when in fact, not only is it causing tremendous pain and torture to many lives around us, but you are ensuring that for many more lives to come for your own soul, you too will go through that pain and torture. Because what you give is what you get, and that is the undebatable law of karma. So I'm just quickly going to read a note on the egg industry, and then say a couple more things before I hand the mic over to my brother. The 346 million chickens used each year for their eggs, called laying hens, by the industry endure a nightmare that lasts for 2 years. At At just a few days old, a large portion of each hen's beak is cut off with a burning hot blade so that they don't peck at themselves out of frustration because of the conditions in which they are kept. Many birds unable and their beak is cut off with a burning hot blade without giving them painkillers. Many birds unable to eat because of the pain die from dehydration. After enduring these mutilations, hens are shoved into tiny wire battery cages. Even in the best case scenario, each hen will spend the rest of her life crowded in a space the size of a file drawer with 4 other hens, unable to lift even a single wing. The birds are cramped so closely to each other that they are forced to urinate and defecate on one another. Many birds die because of the stink of ammonia, and survivors are forced to live with their dead and dying cage mates who are sometimes left to rot. The hens are forced to lay eggs all year round, leaving their bodies fragile and exhausted. Male chicks are worthless to the egg industry, so every year millions of them are tossed into trash bags to suffocate or are thrown into high-speed grinders while they are still alive. So these are just a couple of things that we should know about. And as you know, eggs are very widely used, especially in the US today. I mean, even if you eat pasta in a restaurant, they're often made from eggs. Desserts, I mean, all of that has eggs in them. And you have to always remember, even if you can't find the compassion to care about other life, at least find the compassion to care about your own soul. Because the pain and torture you give other life, trust me, it is going to come back to haunt you in a big way. Maybe in this lifetime you have enough punya so that path that you have accumulated doesn't come into play. But the minute your soul departs this body, you are definitely going to face terrors and torture beyond belief. Even if you choose to believe in Jain scriptures or choose not to, but it is nothing but logic to choose to, nothing but a logical mind and logic to choose to believe in karma. So don't think that you are going to escape scot-free if you continue to give this pain and torture to other souls, because you won't. What we give is what we get. Today we see 8-month-old children dying and suffering because of cancer. We see all kinds of souls in pain. I mean, these are just human beings. I mean, 99.9% of the human beings are suffering today. I mean, and that's just human beings who are supposed to be the most fortunate. When we go down to the animal kingdom, I mean, even I was just on the PETA website a couple of days back, and honestly, I couldn't be on that website for more than 5 seconds. I just couldn't take it. I couldn't see the photos. I couldn't see the torture that people are giving to these animals, and don't feel that we won't be there someday, because our soul will. That's the theory of karma. And anyone, you may not believe in religion, you may not have faith in Bhagwan Mahavir, but I'm sure you would at least have that much of a logical mind to have faith in the law of karma. And it is simple math. So even if you can't care about other souls, you can't find the compassion within you to care about other living beings, at least start caring about yourself. And be fearful about your future more than anything, because life doesn't end after death. Even science believes that energy is neither created nor destroyed, it simply transforms itself. And the soul is nothing but a form of energy. And it is never going to be destroyed. You are never going to cease to exist after death, because you have to pay for the deeds that you have done in this life. You will not go scot-free. It's never going to happen. So we are going to be reborn, and where we are going to be reborn, in what condition, is really determined by how we live this life today, how much compassion we have in our heart for other life, not just humans. And honestly, even the compassion we have for humans is very questionable. Especially, I think the love and affection and appreciation that we have for our parents today is extremely questionable. And I can say that with confidence for my generation, because I know how we think and how we are so independent-minded, and how arrogant we are, thinking that I am everything and everything I am today is because of me and because of my efforts, and we rarely owe anything towards our family or our parents, and we rarely even acknowledge the part that they have played in our life. And honestly, the biggest sins, according to Jain religion, is the ego. And to have an ego and to feed the ego is the biggest sin, biggest path, and all other paths result or basically multiply because of our egos. So this is just something that we need to be aware of. Also, one other big thing that is become extremely common in I think everyone's life is alcohol, and that's something I want to talk about because according to Jain scriptures, eating non-veg and drinking alcohol is the same amount of power. It's the same amount of violence that you are giving to other life, and the fruits of eating non-veg, the fruits that you will have to suffer in your next life, you will have to suffer equal amount of pain and torture by drinking alcohol. Because alcohol scientifically is created by fermentation and by the growth of a lot of life being born and dying. And when you consume alcohol, you are killing just as much life and giving just as much pain as you would if you were eating something non-vegetarian. And this is something, and that also goes for honey and butter, for that matter. The path of eating non-vegetarian food, honey, butter, and alcohol is all the same according to Jain scriptures. And once again, if you want to follow and live a compassionate life, and you want to be a source of fearlessness for other life, rather than you wanting other life to constantly fear you, and you yourself want to ensure that your future is full of peace and non-suffering, then these are things that you must eliminate from your life instantly. And secondly, I think, definitely Jain religion is not the only religion that condemns drinking alcohol. Even Islam, which probably is okay with eating meat, but they condemn alcohol. And staunch Muslims definitely won't drink alcohol. I'm sure many of you who have Muslim friends can vouch for that. So a religion that allows eating meat still condemns the use of alcohol. So you can imagine how detrimental drinking alcohol is to your soul. And that is something that I think is definitely not a necessity for anyone in this room. And I think we have enough role models in our grandparents and enough sanskars to follow that the examples they have set for us. And regardless, if we are fearful for our own soul, our own future, and if we have that compassion within us towards other life, we will definitely refrain from alcohol and simultaneously honey and butter, which is equally a violent, it's equally same amount of violence as there is in non-vegetarian food. So that was just something else I wanted to talk about. I guess I want to leave some time for questions, but before I do that, I know my brother, who actually hasn't been very open to Jain philosophy and learning about Jainism. Since the past few months, he has taken a U-turn in that department, and I'm just going to pass the mic over to him to share his experiences and how and what he has gained, how he has gained and what he has gained by being open to learning more about Jain philosophy.
Thanks, Nisha. So, I'll be pretty brief because I want to leave as much time as possible for asking any questions that you have to Nisha. I think when Nisha gave you a quick introduction about me, a lot of you probably were thinking, oh geez, are the two even related? She has obviously gone a path that is completely different from the path that I pursued.